My husband's business partner was my sister's husband. And somehow, I didn't see the disaster that connection would become till it was too late. I'm glad you're here because this story isn't just about cheating or money. It's about how far a family can twist the meaning of love and loyalty when pride and greed get involved. So sit with me for a bit. Because this is the story of how I found myself standing in the middle of two broken marriages, two lying men, and one truth that cost me everything I thought I knew about family. When I met Travis, I wasn't looking for some fairy tale love. I'd been through enough heartbreak to know that real love doesn't sparkle, it steadies you. And Travis was steady. He wasn't loud or charming. He was calm, polite, and just ambitious enough to make me feel safe about our future. We met at a friend's cookout. You know, one of those summer afternoons where the air smells like charcoal and sweet tea, and people talk about football and family vacations. He was the quiet one in the corner, flipping burgers, laughing softly at jokes. I liked that about him. He didn't need attention to feel important. A year later, we got married. It wasn't extravagant, but it felt right. We bought a little house with blue shutters on the edge of town, the kind where everyone waves when they drive by. I worked part-time at the local library, and he ran a small construction company with his partner, Raymond. Now here's where things get complicated. Raymond wasn't a stranger. He was my sister Carla's husband. So in a way, we were one big family. Sunday dinners were easy. Business talk, family jokes, the kids running in circles while we shared pie and coffee. It felt simple, even comforting. I remember thinking one night, this is it. This is adulthood. This is peace. The four of us, two couples, one shared dream, working hard, raising families, building something that would last. I was proud of Travis and Raymond. They'd started their construction company from scratch. Just two guys with pickup trucks, tool belts, and matching drive. Within a few years, they were landing contracts all over the county. Small-town success stories like theirs were rare, and everyone in the neighborhood admired them for it. I loved seeing that. Watching my husband grow into a man who could provide, who could lead, it made me feel lucky. And when I saw how well he and Raymond got along, I thought maybe Carla and I had done something right too. We'd both chosen men who treated each other like brothers. That's what made everything that followed so cruel. Looking back now, there were little signs, whispers I ignored. Like the way Travis would tense up when Raymond's name popped up on his phone at night. Or how Carla stopped inviting me to run errands together like she used to. We used to talk every day, about kids, recipes, life, and suddenly she'd go quiet for days. When I'd call, she'd say, "Oh, sorry sis, just been busy with the boys and the business stuff." At first, I brushed it off. Life gets busy. Work piles up. Marriages go through quiet phases, but sometimes silence isn't peace. Sometimes it's the sound of something breaking quietly, before the crash. One night, Travis came home late, smelling like sawdust and cheap perfume. He said he and Raymond had been out bidding for a new project. He looked tired, distracted. I remember asking, "Did you at least eat?" He nodded and said, "Yeah, Carla made something for us earlier." Carla. It hit me strange. My sister cooked for them? I didn't think much of it in the moment, but the thought stuck in the back of my mind. It was just a flicker then, small enough to ignore, easy enough to explain. But that was the first seed of doubt. I should have trusted my instincts that night. But love, especially comfortable love, makes you blind in the kindest ways. You tell yourself stories that make sense because you don't want the truth that doesn't. So I convinced myself it was fine. That they were just close. Business partners, family, friends. But you can't bury a secret forever. Even the softest lie leaves a trail. And eventually, I'd start following it. And when I did, it would lead me somewhere I never thought I'd go. Between loyalty to my husband and loyalty to my sister. Between betrayal, revenge, and finally, freedom. Because as much as this story begins with family, it ends with me standing alone. And stronger than I ever imagined. Before everything went wrong, my life looked exactly how I thought it was supposed to. We lived in a quiet part of town, just off the main road, a neighborhood full of maple trees, porch swings, and people who knew each other's dogs by name. Our house wasn't big, but it was warm. There was always a candle burning, always laundry on the line, always something cooking. Every morning I'd make coffee while Travis showered and got ready for work. He liked his coffee strong, with a single spoon of sugar. I knew his rhythm by heart. He'd sit at the kitchen counter, scrolling through estimates and client messages on his phone while I packed his lunch. He'd give me that half smile, kiss me on the forehead, and say, "You're my good luck charm." I believed him. For years, that was enough. Saturdays were for family. Carla and Raymond lived just 10 minutes away, and we had this tradition of alternating dinners. 1 week at our place, 1 week at theirs. It was easy, natural, something we'd been doing since our early 20s. Carla and I had always been close. We weren't just sisters, we were each other's person. We shared clothes, secrets, advice. When I had my son, she was in the delivery room holding my hand. When she miscarried 2 years later, I was the one sitting beside her, holding hers. So when she married Raymond, I felt happy for her. Truly happy. He was funny, smooth-talking, and ambitious. A little too smooth sometimes, but back then I called it charm. He had a way of making everyone in the room feel like they mattered, like he was listening just to you. When he and Travis decided to start their construction business together, I thought it was perfect. 2 good men, both family now, building something that would last. The business started small, remodeling kitchens, building decks, small renovation jobs. But within 2 years, they'd landed a county contract to renovate a series of old houses near the lake. It was the biggest thing they'd ever done, and it changed everything. They started hiring crews, buying equipment, getting new trucks. They'd come home dirty, exhausted, proud. At night, they'd sit on our back porch, drinking beer and talking about plans, expanding the business, maybe opening an office downtown. Carla and I would listen, smiling, proud of them. Sometimes we'd joke, "Looks like we married a couple of CEOs." And in a way we had. Those two were inseparable. Business meetings, lunch runs, late-night calls. It was like they shared one brain. I remember one Sunday dinner Travis saying, "Ray and I are meeting with the accountant tomorrow. Big decision about the new land deal." Carla winked at me and said, "I told them not to forget the wives when they hit it big." We all laughed. Back then, that kind of talk felt like dreaming together, not warning signs. Then came the little things, small enough to ignore if you wanted to. And I did. Travis started working later. At first, it made sense. The business was growing. They were under pressure. But sometimes, he'd come home hours after he said he would, smelling faintly of cologne he didn't wear in the mornings. When I'd ask how his day was, he'd give short answers. Busy, tiring. Ray and I had to fix a mess on site. He wasn't cruel, just distant, like someone whose mind was somewhere else. Carla noticed it too. One night while we were cleaning up after dinner at her house, she said, "Travis looks tired lately. You sure he's not overworking himself?" I shrugged and said, "He's just stressed. You know how he gets when he's chasing a big contract." She nodded, but didn't say much. Looking back, I realize now, she wasn't asking because she was worried about him. She was checking if I suspected anything. I should have seen it sooner. But how do you question something that feels so stable, so woven into your family's foundation? It's like asking if the ground beneath your house is still solid. You just assume it is, until one day it starts to crack. There was this one Friday night that sticks with me. Travis came home late, past 11, his shirt half untucked, his face pale. He said Raymond had gotten into an argument with a subcontractor, and they'd spent hours sorting it out. I asked if Raymond was okay. He hesitated just long enough to make me notice. Then he said, "Yeah, he's fine. Carla picked him up after." That part didn't make sense. Raymond had his own truck. But I let it slide because I didn't want to be that wife, the one who reads too much into every word. Still, that little pause stayed in my mind like a splinter. A few weeks later, I was in the kitchen early one morning, half asleep, sipping coffee before work. Travis's phone buzzed on the counter. He was in the shower. Normally, I never looked at his phone. Trust wasn't something we struggled with. But that morning, something made me glance. The screen lit up. A text from R. It read, "Don't forget what we talked about last night." I froze. I knew R had to be Raymond. Who else? But that winking face, it wasn't how two business partners talked. My stomach twisted. I wanted to believe it was some inside joke, maybe a job site reference. But something about that message didn't feel right. I put the phone down before he got out of the shower and spent the rest of the day trying to convince myself I'd imagined it. That night, I called Carla. Just to talk, I told myself. We chatted about her kids, her work, normal things. Then I mentioned offhand, Travis said he and Ray are thinking about opening a second office. That true? There was silence. Then she said, "Oh, yeah, they've been planning that for a while." Her voice was flat, like she'd rehearsed it. It wasn't the way she usually talked to me. I remember hanging up and sitting there in the dark living room, staring at the window, wondering when everything had started to feel off. That's how it began. Not with one big betrayal, but a series of small, forgettable moments that built a wall between what I thought was true and what really was. The kind of cracks you don't see until light slips through. And I didn't know it yet, but the next crack would open wide, the one that would finally make me question everything. It was early spring when the first real sign showed up, the kind you can't brush off with excuses anymore. Travis had been out late the night before. He said he was meeting a potential investor about expanding their company's portfolio. That sounded impressive enough. But what didn't make sense was that he'd left wearing his everyday jeans and work boots. Not the kind of thing you'd wear to meet an investor. I stayed up waiting for him, just like always. Around midnight, I finally heard the truck pull into the driveway. When he came inside, he moved quietly, careful not to wake me. But I wasn't asleep. I just lay there, pretending, my heart pounding so loud it felt like he could hear it. He went straight to the shower, like he always did after work. But when I got up the next morning, I noticed something odd. His shirt from last night wasn't in the laundry basket. The jeans were there, the socks, but not the shirt. It was such a small thing. But small things start the biggest fires. That day, I found myself replaying every conversation we'd had over the past month. How distracted he'd been. How vague his answers were whenever I asked about business. At dinner that night, I finally said, "You've been quiet lately. Is everything okay with work?" He didn't look up from his plate. "Just busy. Too many projects, not enough people." Then he added, "Ray and I might take a short trip next weekend. Go over numbers, meet a supplier. A weekend trip. With Raymond." Something about it twisted my stomach. They'd never done that before. I tried to sound casual. "Oh, where to?" He shrugged. "Probably Nashville." "Nothing's confirmed," I nodded, pretending to accept it. But my mind was already racing. Later that night, when he fell asleep beside me, I stared at the ceiling and thought about all the ways this story could end, and how much I didn't want to know which one was true. A few days later, I met Carla for coffee. She looked tired. Her hair was messy, her makeup barely there. But she was smiling like nothing was wrong. "How's Ray doing?" I asked, stirring my coffee. She paused. "He's fine. Why?" "Oh, Travis said you guys might be going out of town next weekend," I said, trying to sound casual. She blinked. "We?" "For a supplier meeting or something." "Nashville?" She frowned, then forced a laugh. "Well, that's news to me. Guess my husband forgot to mention it." We both laughed, but it didn't reach our eyes. That was the moment. The first real tear in the fabric of our little family. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling. I tried calling Travis at work, but he didn't answer. I called again around 5, voicemail. By 7, I was pacing the living room. He finally texted at 7:42. "Sorry, busy with Ray. Be home late." "Don't wait up." I wanted to believe him. But the thing about doubt is, once it moves in, it doesn't leave quietly. I started paying attention in ways I hadn't before. Noticing his tone when he talked about Raymond. How often his phone buzzed and how quickly he grabbed it. How he never left it on the counter anymore. Always face down. Always locked. One afternoon, while he was in the shower, I saw a missed call flash across his screen. The contact name was R. The same as before, I knew better than to touch it. But curiosity has its own heartbeat, and mine was deafening. When I pressed the side button, the preview showed a message that said, "Did you delete what I sent?" "Please be careful." My stomach dropped. I took a photo of the screen before it disappeared. I don't even know why, instinct maybe. Then I put the phone back exactly where it was. When Travis came out, I smiled like nothing had happened. But inside, my world had tilted, just a little. Over the next few days, I started noticing how Raymond and Travis talked to each other. They used to laugh easily, teasing, finishing each other's sentences. Now there was this strange tension, like they were carrying a secret between them. And every time Carla walked into the room, Raymond's whole body seemed to stiffen. I told myself maybe it was business stress. Maybe they'd lost money or botched a deal. But my gut said otherwise. Then came the business trip. Friday morning, Travis packed a duffel bag, kissed my cheek, and said he'd be back Sunday. Carla told me Raymond had said the same thing, but when I went to visit my parents that weekend, I took a detour through town. Just habit, really. As I passed by the Lakeview Inn, a small quiet place near the highway, I saw a truck parked out front. Not just any truck. Travis's truck. I slowed down, pretending to check my phone, my hands shaking on the wheel. Then I saw him. Coming out of one of the rooms, he wasn't alone. And even though I only caught a glimpse, dark hair, denim jacket, I knew that silhouette. I'd grown up with it, Carla, my sister. I drove home in silence. No music, no tears, just the sound of my own heartbeat pounding like a drum inside my chest. Everything felt unreal. Like I was floating just above my life, watching it crumble in slow motion. When Travis got home Sunday night, he smelled like hotel soap and guilt. He kissed me like nothing was wrong. And I let him. I smiled. I asked about his meetings. He told me about fake supplier issues, fake names, fake numbers. I nodded like a fool and tucked him into the story he'd written for me. But inside, something had shifted. I wasn't angry yet. Not fully. Just cold. Like the part of me that used to ache for him had frozen over. I didn't confront him right away. I needed to be completely sure. Because if I was going to destroy a marriage, I needed to know it wasn't just paranoia. So I started paying attention to details I used to ignore. Seats in his pockets, mileage on the truck, times on his call logs, and little by little, a pattern emerged. Same locations, same nights. Always when Carla said Raymond was working late, too. By the end of that month, I wasn't guessing anymore. I knew. I just didn't have the proof I needed. The kind that ends all arguments, all lies, and that proof was coming. Sooner than either of them imagined. There's a strange calm that comes before a storm. The kind where you already know something's wrong, but you keep pretending you don't. That's how I felt in those weeks. Like I was walking through a house filled with gas, holding a match, whispering to myself that it wasn't real. The proof started arriving in fragments. It began with the business account statements. I handled the household bills, but Travis managed the company finances. Still, the accounts were linked under our joint online banking. And one afternoon while paying our mortgage, I noticed something that made me pause. A transfer, $2,500, labeled consulting fee. But the transfer wasn't to a supplier or client. It was to Carla M. Dalton, my sister. At first, I told myself it had to be some kind of bookkeeping mix-up. Maybe Raymond had asked Travis to wire the money on his behalf. But when I clicked through, I saw 3 more payments just like it over the last 2 months. All of them on weekends. All of them to her. I stared at the screen for so long my eyes burned. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator behind me, the clock ticking on the wall, the kind of background noises that suddenly sound too loud when the truth starts to surface. That night, Travis came home whistling, carefree. He tossed his jacket on the chair, grabbed a beer, and asked what was for dinner. I looked at him, really looked, and wondered how he could look so ordinary while hiding something so ugly. He sat down across from me, scrolling through his phone, smiling now and then at whatever was on his screen. That same phone I'd stopped myself from touching a dozen times. I wanted to snatch it from his hand and scream every question clawing at my throat. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I said softly, "How's Carla?" She mentioned she's been tired lately. He didn't even look up. "She's fine. Why?" "No reason," I said. "Just curious." He nodded, still scrolling. And that was the moment I realized, when people lie, they get comfortable with it. It becomes muscle memory. The next day, I drove to Carla's house under the pretense of dropping off some things for her kids. She looked surprised to see me. Her house was spotless, but her eyes were red, like she'd been crying. "Rough night?" I asked. She laughed, a little too loud. "Just allergies." We sat at her kitchen table, sipping tea like nothing was wrong. But every time I mentioned Travis or Raymond, she changed the subject. When I was leaving, I hugged her. And as I did, I caught a scent on her shirt, the same cologne Travis wore, that sharp, spicy kind I bought him last Christmas. My stomach dropped so fast I thought I'd be sick right there. After that day, I stopped doubting myself. I started documenting everything. The payments, the text times, the business trips. I wasn't angry anymore. I was strategic. If Travis was lying, I needed to see just how deep the lie went. One afternoon, I went to the construction site where their crew was working, bringing lunch like I used to. The foreman looked confused. "Travis?" "Oh, he left an hour ago with Ray. Said they had a client meeting in town." I thanked him, smiling like everything was fine. Then I drove straight to town. There was no client meeting. But their truck was parked behind the same Lakeview Inn I'd seen weeks before. I parked across the street and waited. Minutes passed. Then the door opened. Travis stepped out first, adjusting his shirt. Then Carla followed. They didn't look like two people making a business deal. They looked like two people who'd already destroyed something sacred and didn't care who found out. I lifted my phone and took a photo. My hands were shaking, but I did it anyway. It felt like photographing the death of my old life. That night, I didn't say a word. He came home smiling, dropped his keys on the counter, kissed me like always. I let him. Because now I had what I needed. Proof. When he fell asleep, I sat in the dark beside him, staring at his face. I thought about the years we'd shared, the first apartment, the long drives, the plans for retirement we'd talked about like they were guaranteed. And all I could think was, how long had he been gone from me while still pretending to be here? The next morning I printed the photos, the bank statements, the text screenshots. I put them in an envelope labeled "For Travis." Then I hid it in my desk drawer. I wasn't ready to confront him. Not yet. I needed to see how deep the rot went. A few days later, I overheard a phone call that confirmed everything. He was in the garage talking in a low voice. I'd gone out to grab something from the freezer, and his words floated through the half-open door. "Raymond can't know," he said. Pause. "I told you, I'll move the money first." "Just don't do anything stupid." My hand went cold on the freezer handle. "Move the money." Raymond can't know. So now not only was there an affair, there was a secret they were hiding from him too. I stepped back quietly before he noticed me, heart pounding. That night he acted like nothing had happened. But when he went to shower, I checked the company account again. Another transfer. This time, $5,000, moved into a new account under Carla's name. That's when I realized this wasn't just betrayal. It was theft. From Raymond, from me, from everything we'd built. And that changed everything, because anger can drown you. But purpose keeps you afloat. I called Raymond the next morning. He sounded groggy, half awake. "Hey," I said, trying to sound calm. "Quick question. Did you know Carla's been getting money from the business account?" There was silence. Then a sharp intake of breath. "What?" I told him everything. The transfers, the photos, the Lakeview Inn. At first, he didn't believe me. Then I sent him the pictures. He didn't say another word for nearly a full minute. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, broken. "I need to see you," he said. We met that afternoon in a quiet parking lot behind the diner where we all used to have Sunday breakfast. He looked hollow, older somehow. He thanked me for telling him, and then with a bitter laugh said, "Guess we both married the wrong people." Driving home that day, I felt something shift inside me. The sadness was still there, but beneath it, a new kind of strength was rising. Because once you see the truth, once you stop making excuses for it, you stop being a victim. You start becoming the one who decides what happens next, and I was ready to decide. When everything you believed in collapses, there's a strange kind of silence that follows. Not the kind filled with tears or shouting. It's quieter than that. It's the silence of acceptance. That was me, the morning after I met Raymond. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the empty chair across from me, where Travis used to sit every morning, scrolling through the news and sipping his coffee like he wasn't living a double life. The air smelled like betrayal. Even the sunlight felt different, colder somehow. I didn't cry that day. I didn't scream or pack a bag. Instead, I opened my laptop and began to write. Not a message. Not a letter. A plan, because I realized something. I had proof, but proof wasn't enough. I didn't just want to catch them. I wanted them to face what they'd done. In the light, not the shadows. And I wanted to walk away clean, with my dignity intact. The first step was emotional distance. That night, when Travis came home, I acted normal. We had dinner. We talked about the business. I even laughed at his jokes. Inside, my stomach twisted at every word. But I smiled anyway. I knew that any sign of suspicion might make him hide things deeper, erase evidence. Or worse, twist the story before I could. So I played the part of the trusting wife one last time. I had to. Meanwhile, I started digging. I called the accountant who handled our company's books. I didn't tell him what I knew. I just said I needed copies of the quarterly reports and expense summaries. He sent them over that same afternoon, and there it was, hidden under vague line items labeled consulting, marketing, miscellaneous partnerships. Tens of thousands of dollars, siphoned out over months. All authorized by Travis. It wasn't just an affair. It was embezzlement. Raymond and I had both been blind, trusting the people closest to us to handle the business side. Now I realized they'd been using that trust as cover. I called Raymond again. We decided to keep working quietly. He contacted the company lawyer, off the record, and asked what would happen if one partner was caught misusing funds. The answer was clear. Immediate removal, legal charges, and full asset investigation. That's when I knew exactly how to end it. Not with a fight. With a clean, public truth. But before anything, I needed to see her. My sister, I went to her house that Sunday. She seemed surprised, maybe nervous. We sat down in her living room, the same one where we'd shared secrets growing up, where we'd laughed about our weddings and our kids. And for a second, I almost lost my nerve. Then she said something small that shattered me completely. "How's Travis? He's been working so hard lately. You must be proud." That tone, the one that almost sounded protective, like she was talking about someone she cared for. That's when I decided I was done pretending. I looked her right in the eye and said quietly, "I know." She froze. Didn't even ask what I meant, just froze. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't deny it. She didn't say a word, only whispered, "Please don't tell Raymond." That sentence broke whatever love I still had for her. Because in that moment, she wasn't my sister. She was his accomplice. I left without another word. When I got home, I sat in the car for 10 minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. Then I exhaled. Long, slow, steady. That was the moment I decided I was done being afraid. Over the next few days, I began to prepare, quietly, methodically. I gathered the bank statements, the photos, the text screenshots, everything. I labeled every folder by date and account. I wanted no one to question what had happened when it came out. Raymond did the same. Together, we built our case. Two people who had once shared Sunday dinners, now working in secret to expose their spouses. But I also started something else. Something personal. Every night after Travis went to sleep, I'd journal. Not about the pain, about who I wanted to be after. Because I knew once this was over, I couldn't go back to who I was before. The woman who trusted too easily. Who said yes to keep peace. Who ignored the small lies because love made her blind. That woman was gone. And I didn't want her back. One night, I stood in front of the mirror, studying my reflection. There were faint lines around my eyes I hadn't noticed before. Signs of stress, of sleepless nights. But behind them, there was something new too. A calmness. A kind of strength I'd never seen in myself. I whispered to my reflection, "You're going to end this your way." Then, as if fate was testing me, Travis gave me the perfect opportunity. He came home one evening and said Raymond had scheduled a big partners' dinner at the office. All four of us, he said. You, me, Ray, and Carla. You know, to reconnect as a family. I smiled and said, "That sounds lovely." Inside, I nearly laughed. Because that was exactly what I needed. All of them in one room. I called Raymond immediately after Travis left for the gym. "We do it that night," I said. He agreed. He would bring the lawyer and the printed financial records. I'd bring the rest. The personal proof, the affair evidence. We'd make it look like a friendly dinner, then end it with the truth. The days leading up to it were almost peaceful. I cooked, worked, laughed at my coworkers' jokes, even went for long walks in the evening. But underneath that calm, there was electricity in my veins, because now I wasn't waiting to be hurt again. I was waiting to act, and that changes everything. When you stop reacting and start controlling the story, you become someone new, someone powerful. The night before the dinner, I couldn't sleep. I lay there listening to Travis breathe beside me, wondering if he had any idea what was coming. Probably not. He was too comfortable in his lies, too confident in my silence, and maybe that was my biggest weapon. He still thought I was the same woman he'd betrayed. He had no idea that she was gone. The night of the dinner arrived with an eerie calm, the kind of quiet before a thunderstorm. I dressed carefully, a dark navy dress, simple jewelry, not flashy, not weak, just steady. Travis looked handsome as always, but I couldn't look at him without feeling the sting of everything he'd taken from me. He smiled as we got in the car, humming softly to the radio like it was just another night. And I remember thinking, how strange that someone could destroy your world and still look so normal doing it. When we arrived at the office, the lights were warm, the table set with candles and catered food. Raymond and my sister Carla were already there, sitting close together, too close. She smiled when she saw me, that polite, shaky smile that said she wanted the night over with. I smiled back, a little too easily, because I already knew it was her last night pretending. The small talk started, harmless, light. Raymond asked about the kids. Carla complimented my dress. Travis poured wine, talking about how this business has been through rough waters, but family always sticks together. I could have laughed. Family. That word had become a weapon. I waited until everyone had their glasses filled. Then I reached into my bag and placed a small black folder on the table. "Since we're all talking about family," I said, "I think it's time we looked at what it's built on." The room went silent. Travis frowned. "What's this?" "Proof," I said quietly. Raymond leaned forward, his face tight but calm. He already knew what was coming. I opened the folder and slid out the papers. Bank transfers. Expense reports, dates, signatures. "Do these numbers look familiar?" I asked, looking straight at Travis. He glanced down and I saw his jaw tighten. Then he looked up with that same smooth confidence that used to fool me. "Where did you get this?" I didn't answer, because that wasn't the question that mattered, the one that did. I turned to my sister. "And while we're at it, maybe you can tell me why these transfers line up perfectly with the weekends you told Raymond you were visiting me." Her face drained of color. She looked like she'd stopped breathing. Raymond's eyes shifted. Confusion, then recognition, then pure, cold fury. It happened fast after that. Travis reached for the papers, but I slid them away. Raymond stood up, his voice low but shaking. "You've been stealing from us and with her?" Travis tried to stand, to explain, but Raymond wasn't listening. He pointed toward the door. "Get out!" Carla started crying, loud, panicked sobs. She reached for him, but he moved away like her touch burned, and for a second I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Then she looked at me and whispered, "You could have kept this in the family." That was it. That was the moment I stood up calm and cold, and said, "You broke the family the moment you decided to betray it." Raymond looked at me then, and for the first time since all of this began, we were on the same side. He turned to Travis, voice like steel. "The lawyer's outside." "I suggest you both listen carefully, right on cue." The door opened, and our company lawyer walked in. carrying his own stack of documents. "This," Raymond said, "is your formal notice of removal from the partnership. We'll be filing for investigation of misused funds and personal misconduct. You'll both be hearing from us, legally." Travis's face went pale. He tried to argue, but the lawyer didn't flinch. "It's all here," he said. "Your signatures, your emails, your transfers." Carla buried her face in her hands. Travis just sat there, frozen, like the air had been punched out of him. It was strange, really, watching someone so confident fall apart. The man who once spoke with such certainty now couldn't form a sentence. After years of feeling small around him, I suddenly realized how small he really was. Not powerful, not smart, just selfish. He looked at me finally, eyes wet, voice low. "Why would you do this, Jenna?" "We could have fixed it," I almost laughed. "Fixed it?" I said. "You mean bury it, like everything else?" He didn't answer. He just lowered his head, defeated. Raymond told them to leave. And they did, quietly, almost obediently. No yelling, no drama, just two people walking out of the building they'd poisoned. The door closed behind them, and for the first time in months, I could breathe. I looked at Raymond, who was still staring at the door, his hands trembling slightly. Then he turned to me and said softly, "Thank you." But I shook my head. "Don't thank me," I said. "We both lost something tonight." He nodded. We stood there for a long moment, silent. Two people connected not by love, but by survival. Later that night, when I got home, the house felt different. Not empty, free. Like it had been holding its breath all this time and finally exhaled. Travis had taken his things. His closet was half empty, his toothbrush gone. A note sat on the kitchen counter, short and pathetic. "I'm sorry. I'll make it right someday." I didn't even read the rest, because there was nothing left to fix. I poured myself a glass of wine, sat at that same kitchen table where I'd made my plan, and stared at the empty chair again. But this time it didn't hurt. This time it felt earned, because the truth had finally come out, and it hadn't destroyed me. It had freed me. Outside, the night was quiet. No chaos, no shouting, no tears. Just the steady hum of a world moving forward. And as I sat there, I realized something simple but powerful. Justice doesn't always come in a grand explosion. Sometimes, it comes in a calm, steady voice that refuses to be silenced. And that night, that voice was mine. After that night, everything moved faster than I expected. Lawyers, bank calls, statements, signed papers, the kind of chaos that used to terrify me. But this time it didn't. Because every signature, every closed account, every removed name felt like one more thread I was cutting from a web that had trapped me for years. Travis tried reaching out, texts, calls, even a letter through his sister. He wanted to talk. He said he needed closure. But closure wasn't something I owed him. It was something I was giving myself, so I didn't respond. I'd already spent too many years listening to his explanations, believing his tone over my intuition. I was done with that. The business fallout was brutal, for him and for Carla. Raymond went through with everything. He dissolved the company, split the assets, and took over what was left under a new name. He made it clear they'd burned every bridge they had. Word spread fast. In small towns, gossip moves faster than truth, but this time, the truth didn't need help. It spoke for itself. People asked questions, whispered in grocery aisles, at church, at the post office. Some gave me pitying looks. Others avoided me altogether. But none of that mattered anymore, because I knew who I was again. Not a wife, not a sister, not someone's background character. Just me. The house was quiet those first few weeks. Too quiet. There's something strange about silence after years of tension. It doesn't feel peaceful right away. It feels hollow, like the air's too big for you. I kept busy, small routines. Coffee at 7, walk at 8, work applications at 9. I found a job at the library again, part-time at first, then full-time. It wasn't much money, but it was something stable. Something mine and the people there, kind, steady, gentle. They didn't ask questions. They just let me be. Sometimes healing starts with that. being allowed to exist quietly without explaining yourself. Carla reached out once. It was months later, after the divorces were filed. She called from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, her voice cracked. "Jenna, please. Can we talk?" I froze. I wanted to hang up. But part of me, the sister part, the one that remembered growing up sharing clothes and secrets, wanted to hear her out. So I listened. She said she was sorry, that she didn't know why she'd done it, that it wasn't about love or lust. It was about feeling seen, feeling powerful. She said Travis had promised to leave me, but he never did, and by the time she realized how far things had gone, it was too late. I let her speak. Then I said, "You didn't just betray your husband, Carla. You betrayed your sister. You broke something you can't fix with words." She cried harder. "I know. I just needed you to know I'm sorry." I took a breath and said, "I hear you, and I forgive you." But forgiveness doesn't always mean reconnection. It means freedom. We hung up, and I haven't heard from her since. And that's okay. Some endings don't need a sequel. Travis, on the other hand, kept trying. He sent letters through his lawyer about joint assets, about fairness, about what we built together. But every time I read those words, I realized something. Everything we built was already gone long before I found out about the affair. He'd destroyed it with every lie. Every late night, every secret. So I signed the final papers, handed them to my lawyer, and said the words I'd been waiting months to say. It's done. And it really was. After the divorce, I took some time off. I packed a few bags, drove to the coast, rented a small cabin for a month. It was quiet there. Waves, gulls, salty wind, the kind of solitude that feels like a deep exhale. The first few mornings, I just sat on the porch with coffee, watching the tide roll in. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting for someone to come home. I wasn't checking my phone. I wasn't rehearsing lies or worrying about other people's feelings. I was just living. There's something profoundly healing about realizing that peace doesn't come from people. It comes from finally being okay with your own company. When I got back home, I started small again. Fixed the garden, painted the guest room, sold the truck Travis left behind and used the money to start something new, a small bookkeeping service for local businesses. It grew slowly, but steadily. People trusted me, maybe because I was calm, organized, transparent. Maybe because they'd seen what dishonesty can do and wanted the opposite. Either way, it became mine, my little corner of stability. A year later, I went to a wedding, a co-worker's daughter. And when they played that old love song couples always dance to, I felt something surprising. Not bitterness, not sadness, gratitude. Because I realized that pain hadn't ruined me. It had refined me. All that heartbreak, all that betrayal, it stripped away what was false and left only what was real. Me these days. I still live in that same blue shutter house, but it's lighter now. There's laughter again. Friends, nieces, nephews, neighbors dropping by. The walls don't echo with secrets anymore. Sometimes I still catch myself thinking about what could have been, the life I thought I was building. But then I remind myself that life wasn't real. The one I have now is, and that makes all the difference. Healing isn't dramatic. It's quiet. It's mornings where you make coffee and don't cry anymore. It's falling asleep without checking the door or the phone. It's realizing your peace doesn't depend on anyone's apology. And one day you wake up and realize you survived. And not just survived, you healed. Sometimes when I look back, I still see the four of us sitting around that Sunday dinner table. 2 couples, 1 family, 1 dream. The smell of roasted chicken, the laughter of our kids, the easy comfort of belonging. If someone had told me then that everything would fall apart, that betrayal would come not from strangers but from the people I called family, I wouldn't have believed them. But life has a way of revealing what's real when you least expect it. And when it doesn't ask if you're ready. For a long time, I thought healing meant forgetting. Moving on, pretending it didn't happen. But I've learned that healing is remembering without breaking. It's being able to tell your story without your voice shaking. That's what I'm doing now. Not for revenge, not for sympathy, but because sometimes telling the truth out loud is the final act of letting go. When I finally accepted what happened, I stopped trying to understand why. Why he did it. Why she betrayed me. Why I didn't see it coming. Those questions don't heal you. They keep you trapped. The real question is, what do I do with this now? And my answer was simple: I rebuild. I forgive. And I refuse to let bitterness be the thing that defines me. I've seen what lies and greed can do. I've seen how love turns poisonous when it's mixed with ego and pride. But I've also seen how truth, even painful truth, can set you free. When you lose everything you thought mattered, you find out what actually does. For me, that was peace, independence, self-respect. No one can take those from you once you earn them. Sometimes people ask me if I ever found love again, and I tell them this: I found something better. I found myself. I learned to cook for one and still enjoy it. I learned that laughter sounds just as good when it's coming from your own mouth. And I learned that solitude doesn't mean loneliness. It means freedom. When you finally love your own company, no one can ever use love as a weapon against you again. And maybe that's the quiet truth behind stories like mine, the ones that start with heartbreak and end in peace. Because yes, betrayal hurts. It tears through your trust, your plans, your sense of safety. But once the dust settles, there's space for something beautiful to grow: honesty. And if you can live honestly, even after everything, then you've already won. Used to think of that night, the night I confronted them, as the end of something. But now I see it as the beginning. It wasn't the night I lost my marriage or my sister. It was the night I got myself back, because that's what healing really is: coming home to yourself after everyone else has left. I don't hate them anymore. I don't wish them pain. I just wish them growth, the kind that only comes when you finally face yourself. As for me, I still wake up early, make my coffee, and open my window to the morning air. It smells like freedom. It smells like peace. And if you're listening to this, maybe you've been betrayed too. Maybe by someone you trusted. Maybe by life itself. I want you to know something. You're going to be okay. It won't happen overnight. You'll cry, you'll question, you'll want answers that never come. But one day you'll wake up and it'll be quiet inside you. That's how you'll know you've healed. And if you ever find yourself sitting alone, wondering how to start over, just remember, peace isn't found in fixing what broke you. It's found in walking away from it. So that's my story. It began with betrayal, but it ends with truth. And maybe that's how it was always meant to go. Did you like my story? Please like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I want to know how far this story of mine travels. And if you take one thing from it, let it be this: sometimes the worst endings lead to the most honest beginnings.